am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Krista Ryan. With nearly 2 decades of experience as a human resources director, Krista is the CEO and founder of KFG Coaching. She's a Bravely Pro coach and a Room Tilter and Limitless Minds, a mental conditioning organization that unites personal growth and business success through the power of neutral thinking. She's the author of the new book, Keep Freaking Going, a step-by-step guide to successfully navigating change. During this episode with Krista, we talk about her family's journey, starting with her grandfather being a part of a family community bank and the tips to make it successful and transition leadership throughout the generations. We also discuss her own journey of unexpected events in her life that deeply affected her and her relationships and what she learned and how she became aware of how she was showing up and how to shift it. I look forward for you listening to this episode with Krista. There's so many great lessons in it, and I hope you share it with your colleagues, family, friends, anyone that could use this advice. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. Today, I am here with Krista Ryan. Krista, do you want to just start us off with a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I live in Minnesota. I actually born and raised here in Minnesota. And I like to say I'm a 3rd generation bank owner / recovering HR director. So what I've done for the past 18 years is human resources within the financial organization that my husband and I own and operate.
Okay.
So I come from HR background. You know, I absolutely love being around other individuals. I love supporting teams. I just absolutely adore all things. I have 3 amazing children. My son he just finished up his first year in college, and then I've got 2 daughters. So they're a junior and a 9th grader, and just enjoying life in general. Like, we enjoy traveling the world. We travel the globe. If your listeners could see behind me, I have a world map because one of my to-dos is to place little pinpoints on all the places I've been. Because we just love exploring the world and meeting new people and having conversations like you and I are going to have today. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here, Amy. I don't know how much in depth you want me to go because I could talk for 3 hours about my history and who I am and how I got here. But
well, we're going to go there.
Yes.
But before that, with your love of travel, what's the most interesting place you've traveled to?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Monte Carlo.
Really?
Yes. So, like, talk about a different world, right? Now, bougie wasn't a word that I used often until I went there. I'm like, everyone here is bougie this and bougie that. I mean, it was absolutely amazing, but it was such fun people watching because I just kept thinking, what do they do in their day to day? Like, the lifestyle is so foreign to me.
Yes.
You know, growing up in the Midwest, it's just not the same, but
yeah,
the whole atmosphere was simply amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's always interesting to see what stands out in your head if you like immediately.
Well, I almost said Amsterdam because I traveled there as well. And that place was like next level because of how many bikes are there. I mean, I almost got my life taken away 4 times by different bicycles and how fast they navigate the streets. And it was another place that's so bizarre, but so beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love to travel too. So you started talking off that you grew up in Minnesota. My heritage is from Minnesota as well. I don't live there now, but my grandparents and my great grandparents, they immigrated from Russia and ended up in St. Paul. and then eventually went to Minneapolis. So yeah.
So I'm like 50 miles from the Twin Cities.
Okay.
Oh,
What
yeah.
are you?
So we're connected that way as well.
Yeah.
I'm Norwegian, so I'm not Russian, but
Yeah. I know. It's a lot of Norwegian.
it definitely is.
Yeah. So why don't you give me a little background on growing up there? So what did your parents do for a living, and do you have siblings?
Yep. I got one brother. He's in the Twin Cities. So he's currently living and residing there as well. My parents, they've always been in the banking world. So my grandfather was a banker. He got involved in the banking business, early 80s, late 70s, something around, no, probably mid 70s, thinking about it now. And then my parents got involved, and then my husband and I got involved. Now it's 20 years ago.
So what does that mean, they were involved? Like, what did your grandparents do?
Bank owners. So buy and sell community banks. So we're a community banking family. Yeah.
Okay.
So
how did they get started with that?
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. They got started by my grandfather. For years was like a salesman for investing and kind of did the door-to-door travel salesman career. When I talked to my mom about it, she doesn't remember a lot of growing up with my grandfather, like in the house or around, because he was always traveling, always on the road. He just got really thirsty for the financial world and didn't want to do the door-to-door kind of sales anymore. So he and his brother actually partnered and purchased a small little Minnesota town bank, and got their feet wet together in the world of banking. And it's crazy looking back at that now, because he just saw great success in it. He absolutely loved the competitive edge that it, involved. And,
what did he do different? Like what would have been his competitive edge?
He was more, I don't want to use the word ruthless because that sounds irresponsible, but he was more willing to take risk. Yep. Not quite as conservative, I would say, as a lot of
that would mean like taking on clients, like not as like high of a credit, or you might take on more credit risk with some way.
Yeah. And taking outside the box. Like, we're going to try to support this individual, even though other places maybe wouldn't. Great at communication and networking with other individuals. Great at kind of schmoozing and finding some high-end clients, really early on that were great referrals. So he was really good. He's kind of like the Frank Sinatra of banking. So fun fact, he turns 99 next week.
Wow, he's still alive.
He's still alive. He's still in his home in northern Minnesota. And we talk every other day on the phone, and he still asks, he's still like, how's the banking world? He wants to hear everything about it, because it's what gave him fuel for his whole life.
So what do you think, like, was there any besides like being a competitive person maybe, but was there any purpose behind trying to help people that did have a higher credit risk or take risk on those people?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I've never asked him. That's going to be a question I'll ask him during that say. I do know he's very open of his involvement in World War II. He was in the Navy, and he has a lot of stories that he's always open about sharing of his involvement in World War II and being in the Navy. And I think that taught him at a very early age, the age of 19 is when he got out of the Navy. And I think that taught him a lot of discipline and almost that servant heart of trying to help others. I think that was instilled in him very early on. And he brought that home with him and just wanted to do something where he was doing something to help support others in whatever that looked like. Yeah. I would guess that would be a lot of where his purpose came from.
Yeah. So was your father working in the business then early on?
So he and my mom got married. They, as newlyweds, had moved to Colorado, and he was a school teacher, and she was a bank teller in a bank there. And then it was a conversation that, my grandfather called and said, do you want to get involved in the family business? And if you did, here's what it would look like, move back to Minnesota. And they did, and they had a fantastic career in community banking as well. And then it's how my husband and I got involved as well. We both graduated from college. We met in college in South Dakota. we both moved to West Des Moines, Iowa, and we worked for Wells Fargo Financial for years. And we're very, very happy there, had wonderful careers, wonderful success, amazing organization to work for. And then we got the phone call pretty much and said, do you want to get involved with a family business and work in community banking? And we kind of gave it a 5-year trial plan. We had just had my son, who's now 19. He was 3 months old. And we kind of gave it a 5-year trial where we will see how this works for 5 years. And we never looked back. We absolutely loved the world of community banking and working in small communities with, we know our customers, we know their children, we know their families.
Right.
We know their stories. We tried to do anything we can to support them in their success. And it's just a very homey feel. And it's been such a great ride.
Yeah. So that's a leap from being a school teacher to going back to. So originally, was he trying to avoid going into the family business or?
No, but he and my mom got married. So in college, he was in elementary education. Phy-Ed, major was his major in college. So he never really even thought about it. Never even explored that it would be an option. So when they got married, he was a well-loved teacher. And then his father-in-law, who's my grandfather, gave him the call. And he's like, okay, this is a different world. But yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Okay. So it was your mom that was related.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
it's my mom's father is the original. Yep.
So she was a bank teller having grown up in the industry and then, Okay. And so when you were young, did you kind of know in your head this is what was going to happen?
Heck no.
Oh, really?
No. I was the person that grew up in Minnesota and was like, the second I graduate high school here, I'm moving to California and I'm going to live out there. And I'm going to do all things and I'm getting involved in the family business. And then life happens. And it's so funny looking back, and it makes me giggle because my kids are now at the age where they're exploring their futures.
Right.
And they're me. I mean, especially my teen daughter, she's cut from me. Like she's my mirror image years ago.
Yeah.
And, I remember thinking like, no way, never going to happen. And all of a sudden you start to almost, I think there's a sense of maturity and understanding of like what an opportunity it is.
Yeah.
To have someone say, do you want to join the family business and give it a shot and let's see where this goes?
Mm-hmm.
It would be a whole nother podcast, Amy, to talk about working in a family business. But there's been ups and downs and twists and turns, but we're so close. We're such a closely connected family. And it's all based on you have to be able to communicate. You have to for that to be successful. And not everyone's going to agree all times, but you have to still make the best choice and keep moving forward. So it's really been great. But no, never, ever was this on my life resume. Never.
Yeah. What did you want to be?
Oh, I don't even know. I probably wanted to be like 7 different things. I went through like a school teacher. I thought that would be fun. Then an interior designer. I thought for a while my major was going to be broadcast. I wanted to be on the news. I wanted to be a broadcaster. And then my internship really showed me that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a family and the hours were horrific.
Yes.
I wanted to go into culinary. Like I wanted to cook and be a chef. There was so many wild things that I'm very grateful for where I'm at now, and that I had to have some time to play and really figure out who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was your major in college?
Communications.
Okay.
So I'm definitely using it. It's so funny. People are like, your major was communications? Yes. And now this is what I do. I'm a professional speaker that I travel the globe talking. So it's so funny. So funny. Like there is a career in that.
Yeah. 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 So, and how did you choose it?
The communications major? Because I had been on the broadcast, and like going into the news.
Yeah.
Once I got almost to the finish line, I think I changed my very start of my senior year. It was kind of the oh no moment of like, I don't really know what I want to do. So I went into communications because it hit all the areas that I already had all my credits. And I knew I loved talking to people. I knew there's a skill, even if I stepped into a different organization, there's a skill if you're able to communicate effectively.
Right.
Are able to have meetings and conversations and giving. There's just a skill that's powerful with it.
Yeah. So, want to dive into one thing you said, and that was this 5-year trial.
Yeah.
So what was like the parameters around the 5? Like, how did you have to set your mindset to get through 5 years? Like, initially, were there any rules that you put in place besides it being 5 years? Anything else to be able to give it a clear shot and chance?
That's a really good question. I think number one, we had to really mentally set ourselves up for success. So we are stepping into the family business. We're a small organization, like 13 to 15 full-time employees. So that's a small community bank. And we had employees that had been, my father was the CEO. And then stepping in as the boss's daughter and son-in-law. It was definitely a challenge right off the start. But what we had to do is get out of our own heads about how maybe we're not worthy of this opportunity. Maybe we're not because it looks like it was gifted to us. In essence, it was a great opportunity. And so we had to kind of like mature really quick, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like had to grow up really quick, step into our value and our worth, and then really start acting as if, because it was very clear and open that the long-term plan was to have my husband take over the business, and run the bank in essence. So that was clear up front, but it was challenging at first because we were many years younger than some of the seasoned employees that had worked there for years. It was a very interesting situation that taught my husband and I a lot of confidence and, really just how to act professionally and really know our value and our worth in a very caring, supportive, and professional way. So I think that was probably the most like, wow, okay, we can do this. We had to own it and really be accountable for it. And I think it didn't take 5 years to know that this was the right plan. I would say it took about 2 to 3. Like, we love this. We love the community banking. We love being in a smaller town for our children, growing up. We love our staff, our employees, became very much family. And it was very clear that they had the trust of my husband and myself to run the business. And so then it was just off to the races.
So how did you build that trust though? So when people have that idea that something's like gifted, you still have to overcome their opinion, even if it's right or wrong. So how did you build the trust so that they did respect you?
We saw it happening. It was happening slowly over time through really the turning point was when my father started to give control to my husband as the president. Like, all right, now you run the meeting, you run the board meeting, you do this. And he started to step away from some of that responsibility. I see this a lot in organizations too, where they're trying to figure out the trajectory or the game plan, right? But it's hard for the accountability, the visionary to really step away from that role. Yeah. Until they do that, it's hard to gain trust because it's kind of like the disconnect. Staff's like looking like, who do I report to? Who's the person that I'm actually going to? So really, when my father retired, it was years ago, that's really where everyone just really locked in, leaned in, really aligned with Chris and myself. And we're like, we're all rowing in the same direction. We see your plan. We see your vision. We're here for it. But it took a long time, little baby steps of growth. It certainly does not happen overnight. And if someone says like, I'd be kidding myself, Amy, if I said, in 5 years we had all 100% trust. No, I'd say We've been there for 20. It was probably a good 10 years of baby steps before they're like, yes, let's do this.
So through that process, did you learn anything different than, because I think I see it as a CPA when I've worked with family businesses. So many things that you've said. One thing is that just being able to set someone up to look like a leader, but you respect them, like that's an important thing. But then the second thing is that I see ends up being a struggle, and we have it a ton in the CPA profession because, there's a lot of families, CPA practices and businesses where the younger child comes in, and they're not a child, but, they're being groomed to take that position, but they have a lot of new ideas. As far as technology, the way business works. You had been at Wells Fargo, so you've seen this like at a scale that most of those people have probably never seen a bank.
Yeah.
So, how did that work as far as making sure that you could, or working over time to bring in new initiatives?
I think we really stepping in, green right away, really took on the role of we are the mentees. My father's mentoring us. And we, for years, I'd say maybe the first 5 years, we really just watched how he ran the business. We watched how it worked. Of course, there was things that we would do differently, or maybe shake up a couple things here or there. But we always knew our boundaries, and we would vocalize to him, some ideas and suggestions. But we never came in, I like to say, like bull in the china shop. We never came in with like, all right, this is what, we're going to shake it up, and here's a brand new way of thinking about things. We really took a respectful route, which I'm very proud of, because I don't think you can make a family business work if you're going to come in and just be like, all right, it's my way or the highway. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we wanted to, this was my father's life and career, and it was successful. So we wanted to learn and be sponges to absorb all of his knowledge and see, how did this work? The ins and outs of community banking. Because like you said, it's very different than Wells Fargo's of the world.
Right.
Very different. But we were able to bring in little pieces, of both sides and say like, oh, interesting. Well, have we ever thought about this? Or have we ever thought about this? And it's more of asking curious questions than coming in with, here's my game plan. Here's what I want to do. Now, let's put on the boxing gloves and see the back and forth forever about it. So it was very much we want to learn as much as possible.
Yeah. I think it's not even just family business. This is kind of a leadership lesson as well, that I think a lot of new leaders feel like coming in, they should just know and like come in like that. And even if you do know your craft, it's still important to understand how things got to be the way they are. And there might be a reason for it. It may not be applicable anymore, but it's still like the underlying, like to seek and understand before you just assume something's wrong. Because there's nothing more frustrating than working at a company where new leaders come in and they're like, we have this idea. You're like, yeah, that idea has happened 5 times and it's failed. Like, so like, you're not the first person that thought of that, so learn from the people that are there.
And we had to embrace the struggle. We really did. So when we came back and gave this like a shot, this was during the time of like 2003 to 2000. I mean, we went through the 2008, during all that crisis. So we saw some crazy things happening in the world of finance that looking back, I'm so grateful for, because we had to really get some mental strengthening tools in place. And we had to really see how to navigate those waters and, flex that resilience muscle and be creative. And that's where we really got to watch my father be the leader that kept everyone, focused, staying neutral, keep moving forward. And it helped us, get seasoned, I would say. Yeah. So fast forward into owning and running the business now ourselves.
So what would be some of those mental strengthening tools that you would share with people to utilize?
Oh man. Oh, I'm using them today, which we'll I'm sure dive into just based on a couple major breakdowns. But I think always coming from a neutral place. So we're hardwired to go negative no matter what, especially in like a crisis, whether it's personal, professional, political, financial, whatever. We're hardwired to go negative. So I think the power of how to stay neutral and not layer on toxic positivity, like rah rah, we're gonna be fine, everything's great.
Yeah.
That doesn't help in some situations, right? So it's staying neutral, which is all about just really focusing on facts. What is true? Like, what is the truth in this moment? So staying in that neutral space and then looking to support each other through whatever it is you're navigating and looking for the next best step. So avoiding the rear view mirror, because that's a lot of times where organizations and companies go, is like looking at what didn't work and how messy that just was. And oh my goodness, that there's a lot of wasted time and energy looking in the rear view mirror. We can learn the lessons from it, but it's a lot of wasted time and energy. So forward focused and staying neutral,
Yeah.
are some of the most powerful tools that we still use on the daily.
And then with your father, you said you looked to him of how he stayed focused. What kind of things did you learn from him?
Humility, super humble and calming presence, but also not afraid to give really fast feedback. I think that is one of his superpowers. Is he's very loving, caring. I'd say he'd give you the shirt off his back. If you were, chilly, it's yours. That's the type of person he is. But in the same aspect, I really respected how if something wasn't going according to plan, whether it be like with family or with an employee or a coworker or a client, he was fast with feedback. That person or individual knew immediately like how they could do better, maybe what didn't work so well, and then the creative solutions came in place. I feel that leaders today are hesitant on really fast feedback, and it sabotages success more than anything else that I see.
Yeah, which comes back to communication. I think people are afraid to do that, but when you catch something early, like if you catch it, it's going to happen again if someone doesn't know that it's an issue, right? Like, but to your point, like he balanced that with being humble, loving, and caring. So when I think there's a difference between fast feedback and feeling like you can't trust that person or they're not in your corner versus fast feedback and someone like personally cares about you.
100%. I say it's a difference between trigger tongue. So trigger tongue is when you're firing off verbal bullets, right? When you're unhappy about something and you're just giving that feedback and like firing off verbal bullets, but they're not in a caring or beneficial way. That's trigger tongue. That feedback can sabotage trust and break down relationships and teams. Feedback that I love is when it's as a gift. So I always tell leaders, if you're holding on to feedback because it makes you uncomfortable, that is one of the most selfish moves that you can do. That individual needs to know that you care enough about them, that you can do hard things, and that you can give this hard feedback and make yourself uncomfortable and maybe them because you can see a better solution. So if they can acknowledge that and say like, man, this isn't working, I have to give you some feedback, then together we'll come up with some creative ideas on what we can do to improve. That's so powerful. So my prayer is that no employees go home at the end of the day like, man, I don't know how I'm doing. I don't know how I don't have a clue. That just means that there's not communication happening.
So how did you balance, all of this? So I would just say like, I have very rarely seen in my years as a CPA that people maintain good personal relationships and professional relationships when it's a family business, because it all becomes so intertwined, and then they're talking about the business outside of work, or anything that happens inside of work affects them personally, and so forth. So how did you manage the family aspect of this?
Boundaries, because to your point, you're right. Even at holidays, at gatherings, at dinner, everywhere, work comes up. We have a code word, and it's peanut butter. So if you're ever in front of my family and you hear the word peanut butter, It means that we brought something up and this is not the time or place for it.
Yeah.
We had to establish boundaries early on. We also use peanut butter if we're rehashing something in the past. Like, why are we bringing this up? There's no benefit. There's nothing of use to come from this other than we're verbally venting. We don't need to do this. So we'll say peanut butter, and then we'll all kind of like look at each other and smile or laugh and be like, okay, we got to move on. Let's move on. It's all about forward progress, motion, and knowing your boundaries, it was also having the awareness too that you don't have to see eye to eye. You absolutely will not. You're not always going to agree on something, but you can still support a decision and move forward, even if you're not 100% aligned with it. You have to trust each other enough to be like, okay, we're going to give this a shot. I'm not necessarily on board with it, but I believe in us as a unit more than I do in me being right. You know, we have to sometimes get our egos out of the way. And I also say the right conversation in the wrong mood is the wrong conversation. So we always have to make sure that our discussions are never emotionally charged. There's power in the pause. Take a breather, take a break, come back to it, have it when everyone's kind of more grounded. There's just a lot of that resilience and mental strength that we brought into our relationships and conversations to make it a success.
So how do you think you having the degree you had is what helped in these situations, or was this passed down?
Yeah, a little. It's all of it, all things. I've seen some relationships not work, so I know what I don't want to do. I think that's also important to acknowledge and say like, okay, this doesn't work this way. I know I don't want to do it that way. But I do believe that my training, just how I've been able to learn and actually witness what does and doesn't work, so has been extremely beneficial in how I communicate with, my family and our whole family unit and employees at the bank. So there's a gift of vulnerability too. Like, when we're not perfect, we always talk about what went wrong so that we can highlight, like, guess what? We're human. We're all allowed to make mistakes, and we forgive fast, love hard, and move on.
Love that. So did you and your husband, or you and your husband and your father, come up with job descriptions? Like, how did you make sure you stayed in your lanes?
So we actually implemented EOS that helped us.
Okay.
So are you familiar with EOS? Yeah. So
but maybe explain it to the listeners who isn't.
Yeah. So listeners, it's entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. Is that right? So we started doing that. It's really helps us learn how to communicate. It's kind of like quarterly conversations, touch points. It's just a tracking system for small businesses in essence. Highly recommend if you're a small business owner or, family business owner, look into EOS. It's an investment, but it's been absolutely beneficial. So that keeps us accountable, on track, redefining job descriptions, making sure that we have, it's called RPRS, right people, right seat, making sure we don't have people in the business just because we love and care about them, but because they're actually in the right seat, helping us grow the business and move it forward. And so that's been huge for our family business at the bank.
Yeah. And then as a mom, how have you balanced all this?
Oh, that's a daily struggle. No, actually, I stepped away personally from the bank in 2000. I'm still an owner, but I'm not working within the walls of the bank anymore. So I stepped away in 2019. Okay. And that's when I started professionally speaking and doing workshops and facilitations. So I actually went, I remember the day I walked into my husband's office, because he is also my boss, right? I was the human resources director and he's the CEO president. Right. I walked into his office and I said, you know what I think I'm doing? I think I'm having a lot of conversations with the staff and supporting them in their growth and, like spreading their wings and helping them get in the right seat. I say, I think I'm doing a lot of like what would be called executive or business coaching. Now, at this time, that was very foreign in the Midwest. Right. So he and I agreed, like I wanted to make sure I wasn't playing with them. I wanted to make sure I was doing it in a professional way. So I went out and got a 2-year executive business coaching certification out in Boulder, Colorado. And then when I graduated from that program, I came back and I actually stepped away from my role at the bank. I quickly realized as a human resources director and an owner of the business, I was already in the way of them truly being able to have vulnerable conversations about maybe what is or is not working, because at the end of the day, I'm an owner.
Right.
So I stepped away from that role and we got someone in place that better aligned and fit to support them. And then I started doing executive and business coaching for organizations on a global scale. What really kind of the pivotal moment, I think, was 4 days after I graduated from this coaching certification. My husband and I flew out to Las Vegas because we love live music.
Oh, we do too.
Oh, love it. So this was our second time going to Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And so now people know that night, because it was 2017, as the Las Vegas mass shooting. So he and I were involved in that.
Oh, wow.
In 2017. So now keep in mind, I had just graduated 4 days earlier from this intensive program. So I had all sorts of these tools about mental resiliency and navigate crisis and change. So came back from that event. And it took a couple years of like mental healing, to like process that. But what I learned from that exposure and from that event was how you as a leader being vulnerable and exposing like when you're not okay, even to your team or your staff, and allowing and letting them support you just by even saying like, how are you doing? Or is there anything I could do? And actually having that heart-to-heart conversation, that I'm talking, Amy, that built trust to a level that I did not even know that we could get to. Like when you start allowing people to be part of your life, part of your experience. Now, I'm not talking like pull out all the skeletons in your closet.
Right. Yeah.
But like have a conversation with your team and be like, you know what? I'm navigating something that's really a challenge and I'm working hard to heal from it, but it is tough. So if you see me having an off day, you can approach me and talk to me about it, because A, maybe I need a little reality check. B, maybe I need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
C, maybe. And so just having that open dialect and open dialogue and saying like, you can approach me, we can be in this together. That brought us to a whole different level of trust. And
well, I think too, sometimes people think it's them if you bring it up.
Oh, everyone has their own story, right? Someone walks into the room and they're like in a bad mood because they just got cut off, in traffic, but they walk in and they have their, some emotion on their face. Whoever sees them walks in has their own story. Like, oh, they're so upset about that Zoom meeting yesterday. Look at how mad they are. No one knows what's going on.
No one knows.
No one has a dang clue.
Yeah. And, it's hard enough every day to get up when you don't have something challenging happening in your life, so.
Yeah.
And be there for everyone else, especially in leadership roles. You have to be
100%. And then most recently, actually last year, in May, so my son was set to graduate, and 4 days before his graduation, there's like a weird thing about 4 days before, 4 days 4 days before he graduated from high school, I was actually diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer.
Oh my goodness.
Had no symptoms. I'm one of those weird unicorns. I had no symptoms. I was under the age of where they would recommend getting a colonoscopy. So it was just by accident. I went in and got a colonoscopy because I had heard a friend. I asked her to tell me her story because she was going through a cancer diagnosis. So I asked her story. And then I heard like this weird whisper, like, Krista, just go check yourself out. You might as well get a baseline, double check, whatever. Well, I got diagnosed with stage 3, had no idea. So even navigating that the last 11 months, I've been 100% open and honest with our staff. They know exactly what's going on. They feel, like we have such trust with each other. They know like my husband, if he's having an off day, they know they can talk to him and ask him questions. And just being vulnerable and open has made both of those experiences probably, like I can say today, the biggest gifts that have ever happened to me were the biggest breakdowns of my life. The Las Vegas mass shooting and a stage 3 cancer diagnosis. but it's because of the way that we chose to show up and communicate through them and not become like a victim to the story. So many times, you know, in teams, organizations, we can become victims to our story. But we were like, no, we can't choose, you know, what's happening to us, but we get to choose how to respond to it.
Right.
Well, even that in organizations and teams is so powerful. You don't have to like things, but guess what you get to do? You get to choose how you respond to whatever's going on in your world. And
so how are you doing right now?
Doing really well. I had my last surgery just 3 weeks ago. Wow. So they kind of reconnected me and removed all the cancerous area. And so I went through 4 rounds of chemotherapy and 4 surgeries. And now I'm happy to say, knock on wood, has got my clean scans and everything looks like it's moving in the right direction.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. You can hear it in my voice once in a while. You know, all these side effects of chemo, I get like kind of froggy, gargly throat once in a while. So hopefully you can't hear it too bad.
No. Not at all. Yeah. So how did you transition to doing this globally? Like when you said that you go internationally to help people?
Yeah. So after the Las Vegas experience and event, like I said, I broke down for about 2 years and I was kind of being a fraud because I was doing executive coaching, but I was self-sabotaging at home. And like I realized I'm supporting organizations on a global scale, you know, helping them be resilient, navigate change, but I am a hypocrite because I'm really not doing a good job of it myself. So I started to really investigate myself. I kind of broke myself apart, dissected what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong in regards to support. So I kind of came up with a 3-step process. And then I started to coach and train my teams that I was already supporting about it. And they started saying, Krista, can you bring this to my other team? So oddly enough, Amy, it's called Keep Freaking Going, KFG. Because people, when I came back from Las Vegas and I was coaching them, they'd say like, what were you thinking out there? What were you thinking? And all I was thinking is I wanted to get home to my kids. So I was running my life. So I was saying, KFG, keep freaking going, run. Well, then it quickly became, that's the action step for all of us. Keep freaking going. Like, do not stop, you know, don't stop, don't get stuck. Always put one foot in front of the other. So I came up with this formula, KFG, keep freaking going, that breaks it down into 3 steps. And it just took off like wildfire. So teams and organizations are just, you know, having others trained on it so that there's someone that can help navigate changes. Yet never was this on my life resume. But now I just kind of traveled the world talking through the KFG steps and getting in front of teams and organizations. And the banking world loves my banking history. So they find that so unique. And then they're like, will you come teach my bank employees how to keep freaking going? I'm like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's just become such a gift. And honestly, I remember the moment that it all changed because I was looking out the back window over our green grass in the backyard. And it was like something just clicked in me that I realized at the Las Vegas mass shooting that one person made the decision to cause that chaos and try to destroy as many lives as possible.
Right.
And 58 people did not go home. So he killed 58 people. But I realized that the way I was choosing to live my life after that, I was stuck as a victim to that situation. I realized like he still wins. Like he still wins if I don't figure this out. So then it was like that gave me such fuel and power. And it like flipped the narrative on its head. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to actually go out and I'm going to try to KFG and tell others how to KFG in their own lives. And I just want to do the ripple effect so that like it's the exact opposite. He meant to destroy, but what he did is he empowered me and he like woke me up. And now it is my why. It's my purpose is to honor those that didn't go home, but to also be like, no, you don't get to choose how, you know, I'm still here. You didn't take that from me. And now I'm not going to let the fact that you tried to sabotage me for the rest of my life. Like I had to break free of those handcuffs.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm so glad I did because when I was diagnosed with cancer, I immediately did not go negative. I was like, all right, what do I need to do? Let's KFG. Like, I already had the tools.
Stay neutral.
Yes.
That's like,
power in the pause. Take it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's hard stuff. And I think for whatever anyone goes through, and, you know, I found it fascinating, you know, I'm at 51 at this stage, and just how the brain works. And there's always like new openings and discoveries when you allow yourself to observe your brain and your thoughts.
Yeah.
So many of us are trapped, you know, in our minds and stay there versus, you know, or maybe try to avoid it.
Yeah.
Because it's too hard to stop and pause. But our brains, our minds are just fascinating, that
it's so
you
crazy.
can have the same story going on your whole life. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I'm going to flip that story just took on a new meaning for some reason. Yeah.
And the body, like, the thing is, if you just try to fake it, your body knows the difference.
Yes.
Body knows the difference.
Yeah.
So my doctor, I'm blessed enough in Minnesota to doctor at the Mayo Clinic. There's like world's best doctors, you know, and they're taking such good care of me. But my doctor has done so much. I'm actually writing a book about this because it's insane. But there is such a connection between your mental, the mind, and the gut. And when I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, they think I've had it somewhere between 7 to 10 years, that this cancer has been slowly growing in my body. And the Las Vegas mass shooting happened 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah.
There's like a connection between when you go through a traumatic situation, you got to do your hardest. I'm a cheerleader for therapy, PTSD therapy. You do whatever you need to do to get yourself on the other side of that, so it can be a story that will empower you and not claim you.
Yeah.
Because your mind absolutely can make you ill through your body if you're not caring for both at the same time. You can't just focus on one. You have to focus on them both.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So it's another thing we have in common. My ex-husband had gotten very sick, and we were at the Mayo Clinic. And I learned so much just observing those doctors at the Mayo Clinic. It's true. Like, I don't think I ever understood like what's different about one place versus another, but it's such a research hospital, but they also are, you know, I'm a yogi, and they were talking about so much mindfulness in his healing. And it's actually pretty funny. I just remembered a conversation when you said that, because we had gotten back, and I had a yoga studio, and they were talking about all these things at the Mayo Clinic for, you know, you are your disease. If you have it in your mind, like you have to be beyond your disease. You are not your disease if you think differently. And I kept telling him, this is yoga. Like, and so
it is.
And so
it is. Yeah.
And so we went at the time to the movie Doctor Strange, like it's a Marvel character. And we left, and he's like, so do you think your mind could actually change your prognosis? Like, and I was like, so it took Doctor Strange. Like,
not the doctors at Mayo Clinic, but Doctor Strange.
Wife. Yeah. But like,
that is hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. It's true, though. I mean, the mental, and here's the thing. There's so many people, when you go through something hard, it's easy to obsess about it. Totally. Think about it and think there's still, and I'm not putting any shame or judgment, because maybe for some it supports, but there's still a survivors page from the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival 8 years ago on Facebook that people post, you know, about their night terrors and how, they're having such a hard time. There's 22,000 people in attendance that night. So I just think I want to just like hug all of them and say, like, it is up to you. It is up to you to move on from this. Do not let that person that did this claim your life. Do not do absolutely whatever you can to get beyond it. Same with any cancer diagnosis, anything. Like, there's such a power in the mental and physical piece. You have to focus on both. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we could keep talking, I'm sure, but I'm going to end it with rapid fire questions that I like to ask at the end of our podcast. So pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Let's do family and friends.
Okay. Things or actions that I don't have that I want to have with my family and friends.
Things and actions that I don't have that I want to have with my family and friends. I'm getting much better with my family. So I want to spend more time in present time awareness with them. And what that means is we're going out for girls' dinner on this Friday. And I swear we haven't done that for 6 months. That's unacceptable. They are my girls. They're my sisters. They're my best friends. And when I'm together with them, I want to make sure I embrace every moment with them. I'm present and aware, and my phone is away, and I'm locked in and making eye contact and fully engaged. Present moment awareness with them.
Love that. Things or actions I do have that I want to keep.
Communication. Even though we're not in body, I love just sending them a text with a heart. That just means like, I love you. You just popped into my mind, and I'm letting you know right away. We all do that together, and I love it. I think just having open dialect, I love that I can tell them when I'm not okay. If I'm having a hard day or I'm mad, I allow myself the grace to be so and have a bad day, and that they're my parachute people. Like, they're the people that help me land softly when I'm on a free fall. They'll pull the cord for me. They're my parachute people. So I want to make sure I'm always honest and vulnerable with them, my parents and my friends.
Great. Things or actions that I don't have that I don't want to have.
Where I start making excuses not to show up. If that happens, it means something's not okay with Krista. Because I need my two values are joy and connection. So I need to connect to people on a human level, face to face. And if I start saying no to dinners, movies, date nights with my husband, going to my kids' sporting events, and making the excuse I'm too busy, I got too much going on, that's a red flag. I don't have that right now, but I did in the past. And I think it kind of cancer shook me awake to being like, what's this all for? This is for those moments that I'm saying no to.
Yes.
I need to make sure that I'm not sabotaging my special moments because I'm telling myself I'm too busy. I'm not. No one is. No one's too busy to spend time with those that they love ever, period. So I don't want that back, and I don't have it right now. I don't want it.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, a lot of times when we're going through stuff, we're so aware, and it's like, how do you stay aware of that when you're in regular life and not in trauma,
Exactly. Yeah. How do you not take this gift of life for granted? Like, I don't want to take it for granted ever again. It's not going to happen. So I need to keep that awareness right here, forefront.
And last one, things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
Things or actions that I do have and that I don't want. I have a tendency, especially with my husband, that when I want something done, I want it done yesterday, and I'm extremely bossy and irritable. I have that, and I don't want it. So I do a better job of being aware when it's happening and allowing a little bit of space and grace to say, I would like this done maybe within the next week, and it doesn't have to get done in Krista's time frame, which is the next 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Because I know that doesn't make him feel valued or respected, but I get that urgency effect in my head, and it's not urgent.
Yeah, exactly. I get it. So, and before we close out, anything that you want to make sure that you say to the audience or re-emphasize before we close our conversation today?
I think I would just love to remind everyone that we're built to do hard things, that we are actually built to do hard things, and that you're not supposed to figure it out alone. If you feel like I can do this, I don't need anyone, I got this, you're lying to yourself, because the human experience, we're better and stronger together. So please allow people to be part of your journey, whether it's your, professional career or your personal life.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you so much for joining today. So many great lessons, and I appreciate you sharing your story.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And now for my mindful moments with this episode with Krista. I thought this story is fascinating, and it's such a great story of how the generations learned to work together in a family business and also be able to protect their personal relationships as well. So we talked about how her grandfather started this community bank in their family, and eventually he transferred this to her father, and then her father eventually transferring it to her husband and herself. And all the twists along the way of being able to understand how to create those boundaries and make sure that their family life was protected in this family business. And I know so many of you probably are experiencing the same thing of being in a family business or work with clients that might be in a family business and see the struggles that happen. And one thing that I really took away from this was the intentionality of how they went about the decisions that they made. And especially the one when her father talked to her and her husband about moving back to Minnesota and being a part of this community bank, and her and her husband making the decision that it was a 5-year trial. Now, doing something like that is really important, but also putting parameters around it, knowing that the beginning is going to be hard and there's going to be things that you don't even know that's going to come along your way when you start on an endeavor like this, and how to create success for this. But one of the things that she talked about was how communication is so critical for a family business and to not avoid it. And I think families, period, avoid communication. I think we all avoid communication, whether that's our family, friends, colleagues, whoever it may be. But especially in this case of making sure that you are surfacing things at the appropriate times in the appropriate way, and you've got an agreed upon way that you are going to communicate. So one of the things that she talked about was to be mentally set up for success, and that they didn't want it to look like it was gifted to them, that they wanted to make sure that they really got to know the business and were making the right decisions for the business, but also honoring and respecting her father that had been this leader for so many years and what was really working under his leadership too, so that they didn't just make assumptions when they came in the door. And I think this can happen in a family business or just coming into a new leadership role, that you might think on the surface that certain things are incorrect, but as you get into the details, you realize that there's reasons that things developed over time. And if you're going to make changes, it might be more complex than you assumed it was going to be. We also talked about how important it was to have boundaries and making sure that you weren't talking about work during family time and vice versa. So I loved when we talked about this code word that they had of peanut butter when they were in family situations, to make sure that they're not talking about work when it wasn't appropriate. And also maybe when they were starting to go back on things that had already been decided and they're rehashing and not being future focused. So these were really great tips, I think, in any kind of working relationship, but it's especially family relationships that are crossing those lines. One of the other things that we did talk about as far as leadership was vulnerability, and that vulnerability that happens when there are things happening in our life that maybe we don't expect, that could be affecting our energy or our mood with the people around us, and we haven't let them know that something is going on in our lives. And she's really talked about two extreme things that happened in her life. One in 2017 with that Las Vegas shooting that she happened to be present in, and you're in the moment of just exhilaration and excitement being at a music festival, and all of a sudden life changes very fast, and what that is and where you give that power in your life. And understanding that there's time for reflection and making sure that you do the right healing, but being vulnerable with the people around you to let them know that healing is happening and your energy might be affected so they don't take that personally. And in the last year of her getting this cancer diagnosis and the effect that has had on her and her being intentional about her relationships, how she uses her time, and staying very, very focused on what is important. So I love her model of the acronym of her company, which is KFG, which is Keep Freaking Going. She said this was something that started in her head when the shooting happened in 2017, so that she survived. But this is basically how we make sure that we continue to put one step in front of the other when things are hard, when change is happening, and making sure we know how to navigate that change. Because when we are more vulnerable, when we communicate better with the people around us of what's going on in our lives, what it does is create a stronger community. It creates a stronger business. It creates stronger relationships. And so really important to think about that as you're moving through your day, and where this might be appropriate and where it might be appropriate to be more vulnerable and open up with someone around you today, to just let them know what's going on and to not take something personally. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Krista. I know I did, and are able to take some lessons away from it and make sure that you share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and know that by being intentional with your energy, it's contagious and helps the people around you when you're really pausing to understand what is affecting you, how you're feeling, and what is the impact? How do you want to show up in your day? Thank you again for listening, and I look forward to having you as a guest for our next episode. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.